Happy Camper Radio with Skip Huber.
It's so good to be back in the studio again. Hello, everybody. I'm Skip. I am a happy camper. And yes, my friends, I'm going to do my best to make a happy camper out of you. I sure did miss you, but I'm all back. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to get right into the camping season. Fall season is good time camping for me. Do you know that your camping equipment can come in real useful during a natural disaster or a long-term power outage? We as campers know this better than anybody, but putting that camping equipment to good use is something to think about the next time a natural disaster or power outage happens to swing through your area. We'll talk about it on this edition of Happy Camper Radio. And of course, the Happy Camper Radio Show can be heard all around the world by great listeners just like yourself. You can find us on iTunes, Podbean, Myra Guide, Stitcher, the BlackBerry Podcast Directory, iHeartRadio, and now on Google Play Music. Tell your friends to tune in to Happy Camper Radio today. You can get in touch with us here at the Happy Camper Radio Show anytime by calling 404-537-2267. That's 404-537-CAMP. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Cam Talker, add us to Circles on Google+, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to www.happycamperradio.com. You'll find all of our social media icons right there on the homepage. Also, if you want to check out any one of our previous episodes of the Happy Camper Radio Show, that's the place to do it. Just click on the podcast episode tab right there at the top of the page. Speaking of shout-outs, let's go to that window right now because we have some newcomers to the program, and I want to take an opportunity to recognize them. First of all, to Jason E. Taylor of Plattsburgh, New York, Tony Anderson Smith, Shelley Warren Phelan of Humble, Texas, Evan Burley of Boston, Massachusetts. They like us on Facebook. To Ashley Lauren of Virginia, Steve Champ of Omaha, Nebraska, and finally to David Hanson. They follow us on Twitter. Thank you all so much, each and every one of you, for joining us. Glad to have you as part of this great Happy Camper Radio family. Would you like to be a guest on the program? You know I'd love to have you. Something in the world of camping you want to talk about? Maybe that new piece of gear that I'm going to be talking about here in about 2 seconds from now, or just about anything in the light of camping. I'd love to have you on the program. Get in touch with me, Skip, S-K-I-P, at happycamperradio.com. If you recall in episode 172, I talked about the interest in buying a brand new tent. I was in the market for a new tent, and I had shopped around. I took a look at some possibilities. I took a look at what may work for me and what may not. And I decided upon the Coleman 8-sleeper instant tent. Because I'm getting up there in my ages, I want to make sure that I do what I can possibly do to make things easy on myself anytime I go camping. And setting up a tent that is designed to be set up in less than a minute is something, hey, I'm all for that. But let me say this. Before I went ahead and decided upon purchasing this tent, I always make sure that I read the description so I know what I'm buying and I know everything ahead of time so there's no last-minute surprises. Anytime you decide to purchase a tent, whether it's a brand new tent or one to replace the existing tent that you're using now, make sure in all cases that it includes the rainfly. If the rainfly is a separate purchase, make sure that you buy that rainfly at the time you decide to buy that tent. I, for one, get nailed with rain every time I go camping. I don't care if it's in the winter, the fall, in the summer, or the spring. It doesn't matter. For some reason, that's the kind of luck that follows me just about everywhere I go. So I went ahead and I decided to purchase this tent, and I purchased the optional rainfly. Here's the thing that really amazed me. It was a Friday afternoon when I made the online purchase. I went to eBay, and I got a pretty good deal, about $153, I believe it was. And the amazing thing was, they told me it was going to be about 7 days before I can expect it at my front door. 2 days later, on a Sunday, the tent arrived. That is the fastest delivery I ever had of any product, especially when the shipping was for free. And I didn't have to do anything more. I didn't have to join no club or anything like that. But that tent came to my front door. And who hand-delivered it to me but my good friend, next-door neighbor, and part-time co-host of the Happy Camper radio show, Daniel. Now, we haven't seen or heard from Daniel in a while. I was talking to him the other day and saying, look, free up a little bit of your time so you can come on back in the studio and say hello to us. I know a lot of our fellow listeners out there kept wondering, where is Daniel? Well, Daniel is a busy guy, and Daniel, by the way, happens to be a U.S. postal carrier. I was wondering whether or not he pulled some strings and managed to get that tent delivered to me as fast as he did. The mail truck, I very seldomly ever see a U.S. mail truck driving around on a Sunday. But sure enough, it was outside my home, parked in the street, and the young lady that was driving the mail truck, Daniel just happened to be out there at the time, and he walked up to her. He knew the driver, and he hand-carried that tent to my front door. He had it slung over his shoulder. I know he delivered bigger packages than that before, but the tent has arrived, and for as busy as I have been for the past couple weeks, I haven't had an opportunity to break that tent out of the box. I'm serious. You would think a guy like me, Happy Camper Radio himself, would be tearing that box open, setting that tent up, getting an idea what it looked like, and I just haven't had the time to do it. That's just how busy I have been. But I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully in the next couple of days, we're supposed to have some nice weather here. I'm going to set it up in my backyard, and hopefully I'll be breaking out this video camera. I would love to shoot a video and maybe get Daniel to help me set the thing up. I think that will be a lot of fun, and if I'm successful in doing that, then I'll post it on social media as well as happycamperradio.com, and you'll be able to see it. The brand new Coleman 8-sleeper instant tent should allow me plenty of room to bring just about anything I need to camp. I'm very excited about it. And hopefully what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean this old tent up that I have because it's not wore out. It's not tore up. It's still usable. But I want to clean it up. I want to package it up. And I'm going to donate that tent. Yes, I'm going to donate the tent to somebody who is a first-time camper who wants to go camping. And I'm sure there are some folks in my neighborhood. We have one of these little apps on our smartphone. It's called The Neighbor. And it goes out to about maybe 30 or 40 communities around this area. And I'm going to offer that tent to anybody who is a first-time camper. Hopefully it's going to be a small family, and they're just looking to get started. Maybe they're a little tight on the budget, and they just need a little bit of help along the way. I would love to donate that tent to somebody just getting started in the world of camping. So that's something that hopefully I'll be getting underway here very shortly. As you know, as the time I have been gone, there have been a couple hurricanes, and we don't really want to think about it. We don't want to talk about it, but it's so important to recognize some of these folks out there and think about what we can do to help them. You know, we had Hurricane Harvey here that came roaring through Houston, Texas, and my thoughts and prayers are to a lot of you folks out there, because I know you're still picking up the pieces, and some of you will be for quite some time. It may take years. It may take a long time for a lot of you to recover from that storm. And some of you folks are probably not even thinking about camping right now. But those things are what we call natural disasters. Sometimes we can survive them. Sometimes we've got to pick up and move out until the storm passes and then come back and hopefully find everything like it was before we left. And we know that's not always going to be the case. We have Hurricane Irma, and that affected us here both in Florida and in Georgia. Hurricane Irma, when it struck Florida, folks there had a long time to prepare to get out. Several days, the authorities were telling people, get out, evacuate, do not plan to stick around. Now, we know in some cases people will say, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not planning on going anywhere. I'm not going to an emergency shelter. I'm just going to stay put and ride out the storm. And the authorities tell them each and every time, if you call for help, if there's an emergency and we can't get to you, you're going to have to wait until the storm passes because we're not going to put our emergency workers at risk. In the case of Hurricane Irma, as in other hurricanes that I have seen, a lot of folks actually heed that warning and they pack their bags and they start heading north. They travel up I-75, and at some point, the authorities will open up both the north and the southbound lanes of I-75 going into Georgia, and in some cases, pretty close to the metro Atlanta area. I remember at the heart of Hurricane Irma, in the town of Macon, which is about 70 to 80 miles south of metro Atlanta area, people were packed on the interstate with nowhere to go. It was jam-packed. I know a lot of folks probably had some camping gear with them. I would like to think that. There were some folks in motorhomes, some with RVs, looking for a place to go. Just about every hotel room along the way was booked. So people were evacuating. Some people had no place to go. But for those who did have camping gear with them, for those who had an RV or a motorhome, they could easily pull into a place, and my hat's off to these fine folks, the Metro Atlanta Speedway in Hampton, Georgia. They were kind enough to open up their campground to Florida evacuees ahead of Hurricane Irma at no cost. In other words, if you were evacuating Florida, if you're trying to get away and you're trying to get out of the area, we had a place to put you. And in addition to that, they even offered free admission to Florida evacuees for a weekend race event. That was so cool. I know folks were just getting out of town. They finally got settled into the raceway, and they were worried half sick about what's going on back home. Is their home going to be okay? Is it going to be flooded? Is there going to be damage? You've got to take your mind off those things for just a moment. And the fine folks at the Atlanta Motor Speedway were kind enough to allow the free admission to Florida evacuees. And that was super. I really enjoyed that. And these folks were able to stay there as long as they wanted to. I know that everybody's cleared out by now, and just about everybody is headed back to Florida to see what they were dealing with. And it's going to take those folks a while to get resituated, just like the folks out in Houston, Texas. But Floridians spent several days here in the metro Atlanta area. Some were dining out in local restaurants. And, families are now, like we say, beginning to pick up the pieces and having to start rebuilding their lives. Natural disasters are not strictly reserved for hurricanes. There are tornadoes, there are heavy rainstorms, there are windstorms, and there are hailstorms. About a year ago, and I talked about this on the show before, we were camping out, my brother and I, and a couple friends of ours over at Georgia Stone Mountain Park, which is a stone's throw away from our studio. In the middle of the night, a microburst picked up trees, it picked up tents, it threw everything around. It lasted about a whole 2 to 3 minutes, but it caused a lot of damage. And, of course, I had a tent that was staked out very well to the ground. It wasn't going anywhere. But it destroyed a canopy that I had. I remember a lot of people getting up in the middle of the night just throwing everything they had in their hatchback, in the bed of their pickup truck. They were packing up and leaving. And I was able to climb back in the tent, and when we woke up the next morning, we took a look at the damage. Not very many people were left in the campground, but those things do happen. You just never know when Mother Nature is going to shake her worst at you. It could have been much worse. Not long ago, I had a privacy fence and a dog kennel destroyed by a large fallen tree because of a microburst over on one of my rental properties. You just never know, but it's important that you be prepared in the event of a long-term power outage or a natural disaster. Not every storm is going to cause homes to lose power, but when the power goes out and you're fortunate enough to be able to stay in your home, emergency preparation and readiness is the key to getting you through the long haul. During Hurricane Irma, there were high winds and storms that worked its way through Georgia. At the heart of that storm, nearly 1 million people were without electricity, and many people were not prepared for it. Granted, there are a lot of campers out there who are prepared, but there are a lot of people who don't camp who weren't prepared. Several schools were closed, businesses were shut down, and fortunately for our neighborhood, We only went without power, I want to say about 3 minutes. Not everybody was so lucky. Your camping equipment, if you're a camper, if you're as serious about camping as I am, that equipment can come in handy to help get you through the storm. Camp stoves are great for when the power goes out. Let's say, for example, you have electrical appliances. You have an electric oven. They're not going to do you any good when the power goes out. And, of course, your refrigerator. If you wait any longer than 4 hours to get that food out of your refrigerator into a cool place, say maybe a cooler with ice, you're going to begin to experience spoilage. And a lot of people had that problem during Hurricane Irma here on the East Coast. Many people have complained about losing their food. Now, a generator with a supply of gasoline on hand can keep that refrigerator running for an extended period of time. But you've got to be very careful with these generators, folks. Sadly, there are some families there today mourning the loss of loved ones due to the lack of safety and not knowing what they were doing. This is not a pleasant thing to talk about, but a lot of people overreact when they know there is a dangerous storm moving into the area. Just about every one of these generators at the home improvement centers go flying off the shelves. And some folks don't even bother to read the instructions. They just figure, well, I'm going to take an extension cord, I'm going to plug this appliance in, I'm going to put gasoline in it, oil in it, I'm going to fire it up, everything's going to be okay. And that's not the case. Generators are very dangerous. They produce carbon monoxide fumes that are deadly, and they are to be used outside an enclosed environment. This is so important, folks, and I've done a show before on generator safety. I'll probably go ahead and fire one up again because it's a subject matter that does affect our lives. Even us campers, if we don't know what we're doing, generators can be very, very dangerous. If you recall what happened in Florida, I think there was a couple instances down there where a family of 4 had perished because they chose to run a generator inside a garage. Even with the garage door and the windows open, those carbon monoxide fumes can easily work their way into a home. Here locally, our local fire department sent out a notice about generator safety, and they were talking about keeping the generator away from the home as far as you possibly can. A safe distance, I believe in their words, was something like 10 feet. But you've got to keep the exhaust facing away from the home. If you don't do that, if you don't follow the manufacturer recommendations to the letter, it can affect your family, it can affect your lives, and you've got to be careful. I know you've got a lot going through your mind when a natural disaster happens to work its way into your neighborhood. You're worried about your food, you're worried about your family's safety. What's going to happen next? How are we going to stay in touch? What information are we going to be getting from the outside world? And yes, some people do buy these generators right off the shelf. Just a couple days ago, I went down to our local home improvement center, and I'm not going to mention any names, but right there, as soon as you walk in the door, they had a restocking supply of generators. There's probably about 30 or 40 of them sitting right there in the center of the store. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. I can understand from a marketing standpoint, yes, they probably want you to be prepared. They probably want you to be ready. But if you're going to go ahead and buy a generator, I would say get one before the storm arrives, where you have some time to familiarize yourself with it and get yourself acquainted with all the safety features. Now, yes, I have a generator here. I've never had to use it in an emergency situation before, but I've got it on hand. That generator I bought back in the late 1990s when I was using my truck camper, and I would pull it behind me with a little small pull-along trailer. And I would happen to get to a campground that maybe it didn't have any electricity, but I was able to go ahead and fire up that generator occasionally to go ahead and cool off the inside of the trailer because it did have an air conditioner inside of it. I'm talking to my truck camper. It's not run very often, but still every couple weeks I pull it out of the garage and I fire it up. I make sure it has a full tank of gas in it. I change the oil regularly. I still have the instructions to that generator. I've read it before, I'll read it again. I make sure that any time I plug an appliance into it, that I have the proper extension cord that's going to handle the load that I'm going to be running through that line. See, that's something else a lot of folks don't think about. There are certain extension cords you just cannot use, say if you're powering a refrigerator. You know, you're going to have to run something like maybe a 12-gauge cable, a 14 or 16-gauge cable, are not going to cover it. If you're not familiar with generators or the power loads and things like that, and you're thinking about buying one, if the instruction manual does not tell you exactly what you need to know, feel free to contact a qualified electrician in your area or somebody who does know that can give you the advice you need to keep you and your family safe in the event you have to use one of these generators during a natural disaster. Safety is always a number one factor. You're going to want to keep your generator, like we say, a distance from your home. I have a place right in my driveway that I have designated as a spot for my generator in the event a natural disaster happens to come through. The exhaust is going to be facing away from the home, and one of the other things you need to keep in mind too, friends, is generators are loud. These portable generators make a lot of noise, and if you're running them constantly and you're in a really small community where the houses are up against one another, it can upset your neighbors, especially if their refrigerator don't have any power to it and their food is spoiling and they have no way of connecting up to a generator like you do. Yes, it can get them upset. So you got to be very mindful of that too. Depending upon the size of the generator, you may be able to run a small air conditioner. Not long ago, the air conditioning system in my home went out. And because the qualified AC technicians in our area were also busy and dealing with other folks, we had to wait about 3 or 4 days before we had our air conditioning system fixed. And I hate to say this, but it run me about $1,700 to get that air conditioner running like it was supposed to. Yes, some of these repairs can be costly, but because we were without electricity right here in the heart of summer and the temperatures were so brutal, I went down to the home improvement center and I bought a small floor-standing AC unit. I was able to plug that into the wall, and at least in one room, we were comfortable. The rest of the house, not so lucky. But those things, like I say, they're great to have on hand. In the middle of summer, if something were to happen, I probably could plug that small air conditioning unit into my generator and be able to use that. When you have a long-term situation, like a long-term power outage or a natural disaster, we as campers know that we need to keep our camping equipment close at hand. And if you do by chance have one of these generators, make sure that you have plenty of long, heavy-duty extension cords on hand. That is something I'm never in short supply of. Always seek the advice of a licensed electrician if you don't know what you're doing or if you're not sure what you have in front of you. It's so very important, friends. Now, fall and wintertime disasters, they can happen as well. Winter storms, luckily here in the metro Atlanta area, we don't see them all that often. But in a lot of cases, when the weather gets bad and the wind starts blowing and trees start coming down and they take down power lines, they take down power transformers, it's not uncommon for the power to be out for several hours. In the wintertime, if you've got a fireplace, you want to make sure you have plenty of firewood on hand. And don't forget to have that fireplace inspected annually. It's so important, folks. There are some homes that actually burn up because some people don't follow the safety rules and think, well, that fireplace worked fine last year, it's going to work fine this year. It's not always an option for people living in an apartment. Fireplaces should be inspected, like we say, at least once a year. In my case, and I'm sure in a lot of your cases too, if you're a fall and wintertime camper, chances are you've got a tent heater. The tent heater that I bought a couple years ago, I love this, folks. It's a Mr. Buddy heater. It's a great tent heater for fall and wintertime camping. It runs on 1-pound propane tanks. If I want to, and I do this a lot of times when I'm camping, I take the 20-pound tank. And I actually have a hose that I connect directly to the Mr. Buddy heater because those 1-pound tanks will only last you about 3 hours before you've got to change them out. These tent heaters can be used indoors. The instruction manual even tells you that. Now, you're not trying to heat up your whole house, but if you're going to be without electricity in the wintertime and you're not able to run your furnace, gather everybody, put on some warm clothes, and get together in one room. And if you've got one of these Mr. Buddy heaters that are safe for you to use indoors, then you have a way to keep everybody warm and comfortable until the power comes back on. I have plenty of those 1-pound propane tanks. They don't recommend you using the 20-pound tank if you're using them indoors, but if you've got a 1-pound tank that you're going to attach to the Mr. Buddy heater, that's great. You can use that. I probably have about 6 or 7, maybe about 10 of them down in my storage shed. So, keeping those things handy and being prepared, that is the key. But regardless, folks, remember to read that instruction manual. I can't tell you that enough. Nobody ever counts on a disaster to strike. Advanced preparation will definitely help you and the family get through. Don't wait to begin preparing for the next event to occur. Everybody's going to be running at the last minute to get to the store to buy stuff. You see how they run into the grocery store and they buy up all the bread, buy up all the milk. And they do this here when they go to the hardware store. They buy up all the flashlights, they buy up all the batteries. Everybody's running at the last moment. Prepare now. Get a plan together today. Have your camping equipment handy. Anytime that you're ready to use it, it's going to be right there. It's time now for our featured campground of the week here on the Happy Camper Radio Show.
Happy Camper Radio. Happy Camper Radio.
Right around Labor Day is the time that many of the recreation.gov campsites start to close down for the season. Well, there's one here in Kentucky that's still open all the way through October 22nd. If you happen to be passing through that state and you're interested in doing a little bit of camping, consider Bailey's Point. It's our featured campground of the week here on the Happy Camper Radio Show. Bailey's Point Campground is the largest of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers campgrounds on Barren River Lake. This campground offers several waterfront campsites with scenic views of the lake. At Bailey's Point, you are sure to find a site that's your escape to nature and relaxation. The 10,000-acre lake is hugged by wooded hillsides in south-central Kentucky with scenic views from almost every campsite. It's sure to make a memorable camping experience. Bailey's Point has 215 sites for a variety of RV and tent campers and is open April through October. Most sites are equipped with electric and water hookups, with 2 playgrounds, a sand volleyball court, basketball court, and amphitheater for weekend movie nights. The campground offers plenty of opportunities for family and entertainment. Check out the activities and amenities on their website, also the Know Before You Go items. If you happen to be floating through Kentucky anytime this month and you're looking for a great camping opportunity between now and October 22nd, consider Bailey's Point. It is our featured campground of the week here on the Happy Camper Radio Show.
Skip Huber.
That's me.
HappyCamperRadio.com.
And of course, if you have a campground you would like for us to feature on the program, by all means, get in touch with me, Skip, S-K-I-P, at HappyCamperRadio.com. Make sure you include a link to the campground website. And of course, that is going to be the end of this edition of Happy Camper Radio. As always, folks, I'm excited about being back behind the microphone. And if you're a fall and wintertime camper like I am, get your gear together. It's just about that time to make it happen. Remember, friends, every pet deserves a loving home. Do exactly like I did. Visit your local shelter and adopt a pet today. You can find us online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at www.happycamperradio.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Camp Talker. Add us to Circles on Google+, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Happy Camper Radio Show is a presentation of Skip Huber Productions. I'm Skip. I am a happy camper. And no question about it, my friends. Hang around with me long enough, I'll make a happy camper out of you. Talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye, everybody.